Well, welcome back to the Hot Seat. I'm delighted today to be recording a conversation with Camilla Dell, founder of Black Brick, here at the L'Horizon Hotel in Jersey. Welcome, Camilla.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So it's a terrific sunny day here in Jersey. We're all set for the dinner. Are you a regular visitor down to Jersey to work with the professionals here?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has just caused, just put a break in everyone's diary. So the last time I was in Jersey was 2018. When I looked back, I couldn't believe how long it's been since I was last here. But pandemic aside, I normally come to Jersey at least once a year to visit the professionals communities. I don't actually have any clients here, but it's mainly to visit private banks and trusts that we work with. So. And it's great to coincide my business trip with your lovely dinners.
Great. And so that might be the Channel Island banks, for example, that lend a lot on UK property, so you can work quite confidently with them, helping their clients find the right property that they can finance, or trustees. Exactly.
So yeah, it's a combination of banks that are lending on UK property, but also trusts. Some of our ultra high net worth clients very rarely buy property in their own personal name. Often it's done through a trust. So we work with a lot of trust companies here, and it's great to put a face to a name and just build those relationships in person again.
And are you finding, there's a lot of headwinds and a lot of negativity in the UK economy right now, but we know that the global international buyers go to London real estate in times of crisis. Are you seeing weakness in sterling being that opportunity to buy? Is that factoring through, do you think?
It's a really interesting time. I speak to some clients who work in private equity in particular, who are very doom and gloom about the world in general. And they tell me that in the last 2 weeks, trillions have been wiped off people's wealth and people don't have spending power anymore. And they're very pessimistic about the world. But, we're busy at Black Brick. We're really busy taking new inquiries every minute. Just before I came to meet you, I had two new inquiries come through in the space of 20 minutes. So, I think in times of crises, people do return back to what they consider to be safe haven asset classes. In high inflationary environments, real estate typically is seen as a hedge against inflation. Obviously, the weak pound at the moment, I think it's at 121. It maybe dipped as low as 121 today. That is an incentive for a lot of not just US-based buyers, but also clients who are pegged to the dollar. So, for example, clients in the Middle East are pegged to the US dollar. So it is, I think, acting as but more of a pull towards the property market. We're certainly busy, but you've always got the naysayers, but they often have an ulterior motive. They often want to buy a property, so they're trying to talk the market down so they get a better deal.
But I guess that's where advice is more and more necessary. In these complicated markets where there's a lot of uncertainty, that's where, seeking counsel and advice from independent sources is more valuable than ever.
Absolutely. It's so important. And part of the reason why I do these business trips is also it's an educational piece. Just to let people know that there is another way to buy property. You can go to an estate agent, but they're representing sellers, or you can go to a buying agency and be represented. And it's just constantly educating the market on a different approach.
And what about on the supply side? There's you read a lot of reports about just not enough property in the prime central and kind of coming to market. How do you help clients sort of combat that lack of supply? They might be willing buyers, but the uncertainty holds people back.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why buying agents exist, particularly in a market like London, because it's so opaque and so much property now is bought and sold off market. This year, 50% of our acquisitions have been off market, which is a record for us. And I think more and more sellers are deciding that they don't actually need to be out there on all of the web portals in order to successfully sell a property, particularly in a market that is quite short on supply. As a seller, you can often get a better outcome on price by remaining discreet and off market. And you also avoid the risk of overexposing your property. So I can totally see the advantage of selling off market from a seller's perspective. Obviously for buyers, it's not an advantage. It makes it much more difficult to navigate the market and much more difficult to get a good outcome on price. But it is also where a buying agent comes in, and we can help clients, and certainly for clients that are looking for very specific properties on certain roads, we can then go make some direct approaches to owners of homes that we know meet with our clients' requirements to see if they're open to selling. And that's an approach that's worked really well for us over the last 18 months.
And are you noticing any certain demand from regions of the world in for London at the moment, or is it's just across the piece? Is there any trends there in the types of buyers?
Yeah, I think we've been really busy over the last 2 years with domestic clients, actually. I think a bit of a hangover from COVID. A lot of people decided to make lifestyle changes and buy bigger properties with gardens and sort of more leafy suburb areas of London. So we're still quite busy with that type of client, but we are now starting to see some international buyers come back to the market. I mean, Middle Eastern buyers is a huge market for us at Black Brick, so they're still very, very active in the market. Some US, a little bit from Africa as well. Not seeing much from Asia at the moment, understandably. I think, it's quite difficult, and travel restrictions, they're still suffering with COVID over there. But it's a busy market.
Are some of those preferences from the pandemic still on buyers' minds now? The bit more space or the home office or different things that really weren't a factor before. They weren't temporary. Are they? Do you think they're a bit more permanent, semi-permanent?
I think they're ingrained.
Yeah.
I think people are now. It is all about flexible working. They've returned to the office, but they're still maybe spending 1 or 2 days at home. And I think just the importance of a home, the pandemic just really brought that home to people. And so, that trend of people wanting houses with gardens, certainly in London, and not wanting to be right in the centre, but wanting to sort of move out to areas like St John's Wood and Hampstead, Richmond and Wimbledon and Dulwich. We're very active in Dulwich at the moment. That is something that I don't see fading away anytime soon. And the international market is slowly starting to trickle back into prime central London, as you would expect. And that's where I really think the opportunity is at the moment. Because the apartment market in prime central London hasn't really done very much over the last few years. We've seen stellar growth outside of London in markets like the Cotswolds, for example. But actually in prime central London with flats, hasn't really done very much. So bit of an opportunity there, I think.
And how do you work with international buyers who feel like they know London, but actually you're completely on top of the contemporary trends and maybe might be able to educate them on new areas that are coming up that actually are great investment opportunities? What's the kind of process you might go through with?
Yeah, we've got all sorts of clients that we look after at Black Brick. We've got some clients that, particularly our domestic clients, they know the markets really, really well, and often they've tried to do the search themselves unsuccessfully, and they've reached the point of complete and utter frustration, and that's the point that they then turn to a buying agent. I would say with our international client base, they're less familiar with the market, and so they're coming to us really for that advisory piece. Sometimes they know what they want to spend, they've got their budget, but they really want advice and direction from us in terms of where they should be looking, what their budget gets them in different parts of London. Obviously, pricing across London just varies hugely from street to street, not least from area to area. So, and we're happy to work with both kinds of clients that know the market really well but need our help, and then clients that are less familiar and want more advice and guidance on location choice as well.
And we touched on before those moving out of London during the pandemic. Do you think we've sort of seen the peak of that trend, or are we moving further down the line? What's your read on how those buying preferences during the pandemic are going to?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. I think some demographic for sure they completely left London and they moved out, and I think it was young families, it was people with sort of budgets between 800,000 and 1.5 million. That obviously goes so much further when you leave the big smoke that it does in London. And I think those people have made real lifestyle choices. Probably they were going to make that move anyway, even if COVID hadn't happened, but COVID sort of accelerated their moves. But I think in terms of sort of the mass exodus, and I think that's over, and actually we're seeing a bit of a reverse trend, and we're seeing people now come back into the city and struggling to find, particularly in the rental market. Rents have gone up over 10% this year because young people that moved back in with mum and dad to save on rent during the pandemic and go to the coast, they're all coming back in now because most employers do want their teams in the offices at least 3 days a week. And so we are now seeing a return back to London, which is great.
Great, and you're obviously here with us today in Jersey. Your colleague Casper joining us in the Isle of Man next week. You're coming back out on the road, looking at Dubai in November. Yeah. Are you excited to be back out, travelling, seeing people again?
Yeah, really, really excited. And thank you, David, for doing such an amazing job with PCD, because I think, you know, just seeing your emails come through, it's a reminder to me to get back out there. I think you know, business generation and business development is tough, and it can be quite lonely. And, you know, where you have your dinners, it's all cities that I need to go to, where I have clients or I have people that I do business with, and it's nice to do all my meetings during the day and then in the evening not have room service but come to one of your dinners and have a nice evening.
Fantastic. Well, look, wonderful to talk to you, Camilla, and look forward to sharing this with our members.
Thanks, David.